Welcome to the Cultivating Health Equity Stories podcast. In this captivating series, we delve into the heart of health equity, sharing stories that illuminate the path toward a fairer, more inclusive healthcare landscape. Our mission is to amplify voices, challenge norms, and inspire change. Here is your host, Dr. Troy Campbell, a research scientist on health equity issues.
Tracia Williams' life story is truly remarkable. Born with spina bifida, a condition affecting the spinal cord, she faced significant health challenges from birth. Tricia underwent back surgery shortly after birth to close an exposed spinal hole, but her medical journey continued. 2 weeks later, emergency brain surgery saved her life by draining excess fluid. Tragically, in 2021, she lost her father to gastric stomach cancer. Then in 2022, discovered a lump in her left breast, which was eventually diagnosed as breast cancer in March 2023. Throughout her ongoing treatment, Tricia's unwavering faith sustains her. Her story exemplifies resilience, determination, and the power of hope in adversity. Tricia, it's so good to have you on our Health Equity Stories podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for being here. And we'll go into our conversation so you can tell your story. Can you share perhaps a little about your early life and growing up with spina bifida? And perhaps your parents have filled you in, what happened at birth and around that time.
Yeah, January 16th, 1986, mother's co-workers surprised her with a birthday party.
Yeah.
And her birthday is January 15th. Mine is on the 16th.
Oh, day before.
Yeah. Day before.
Yeah.
And so they planned a surprise party for her. And my father, he was working at the same hospital that she was at. And so he was on a different floor working. And mother started to have labor pains. She thought it was something she had eaten because they had brought food for her.
Yeah.
Come to find out, she was in labor. And on the intercom, my father heard, "Mr. Franklin, your wife is in labor." So he had to rush and be by my mother's side. And she came early. I was supposed to have been born Valentine's Day, but I came early. My mother was in labor for a few hours, and my mother didn't know this, but spina bifida. She didn't know until after she had given birth to me. And she did not even get a chance to hold me, as most mothers get to do when the baby comes out. And so
because of your condition, right?
Because of my condition, I had a hole on my lower back that they had to close up. So they had to rush me to a different hospital to get that done. And my father, he jumped in the car and followed the ambulance. And he was going back and forth, seeing me and checking on my mother because she was at a different hospital.
Right.
So he was going back and forth, visiting us and not getting any sleep. And so he was concerned about my mother and concerned about me.
Yeah, of course.
And so they did the surgery. It was a success. 2 weeks later, I was able to come home. My mother and I were able to come home together. And my mother was feeding me, bottle feeding me. And then all of a sudden, my face started to swell. And I started to turn, I think it was blue. My face was turning blue. And my mother yelled to my father. We had to hurry and rush her to the hospital. They got me to the hospital in time, and it turns out that I needed a shunt. And that's what most spina bifida patients need, is a shunt.
Yeah. Okay.
To keep the fluid from going to their brain. And so at 2 weeks old, I had brain surgery. And I was in hospital for a little while, and after that, I was okay. I healed up nicely. Later on, I had to have 2 feet surgeries because I didn't get to learn how to walk until I was 2. And I had, like, cleft feet. So they had to straighten my feet out. So I had two feet surgeries. And when I was 5 years old, my mother and I were in my room. We were cleaning out my closet. And my mother and I heard a snap. And they took me to the hospital. And it turned out that the shunt snapped in 2. It didn't cause any pain, but I did feel a little something, but it didn't really hurt. And the doctor told my parents that I had to have brain surgery to get that corrected. And what their goal was to put another shunt in. When they put me under, they saw that my brain was functioning fine. I didn't need the shunt as they had planned. And the doctor came out to the waiting room and my parents were praying. They were praying for me. And he told my parents, I don't know what's going on, but your daughter is functioning fine without a shunt. And this was still during the surgery process. He couldn't believe it. And it was a miracle from God. Yeah. The Lord answered my parents' prayers. And to this day, I still don't need a shunt. I don't have a shunt.
You truly needed a miracle.
Yeah.
You truly needed a miracle.
I did.
And I'm just drawn into all these things. So many things happening to a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
The first 5 years of your life, right?
Yeah. First 5 years. I've had multiple surgeries. I had 2 back, 2 feet, and 2 brain surgeries already.
So you're telling us in such detail, meaning you've sat with your parents and they say, Tricia, this is what happened.
Yeah.
Can you remember how early you started understanding what happened? All the surgeries you underwent?
Well, I understood to the best way of my knowledge, being little, Yeah. But I understood pretty well what they were explaining to me.
Right.
And I understood the word surgery.
But
it scared me.
It scared you. Yeah, well, you were loved, obviously.
I was loved, definitely. And they supported me.
Yes. Now, so we had an initial conversation before this recording.
Yes.
Doctors initially predicted that you wouldn't walk or sit up.
Yes.
Yet you defied those expectations.
I did.
Can you tell us a little about that?
Well, yeah, when I was born, I told my parents that I would not be able to walk. I wouldn't be able to sit up. I wouldn't be able to think for myself. Just basically I would just be almost like a vegetable.
Yeah.
But the Lord always has the final say. He always has the final say. And
I imagine your parents didn't take that for the only option, right?
No, they did not. They prayed and they trusted God and they had faith. Their faith was strong, very strong. It was difficult and painful, going through the surgery. Yeah. It was painful, but I had a lot of support from my parents and I knew that it was for my good. I never questioned God. I never asked him, why me? Why is this happening to me? I just took it as there's something that needed to be done. I'm just gonna do it, even though I had some fear. But God took that fear from me.
God took that fear from you. It seems, and there's a spiritual aspect to our lives, of course.
Yes.
And going through these many surgeries, you're saying that God somehow, he protected your mind, your thinking, your approach to life, and protected you from depression. That might be what I'm trying to say.
Exactly. And it gave me a chance for me to conquer it all. And he helped me. He helped me.
Yeah.
He got it.
So from an early age, you have a spiritual aspect about you. You realize, though you were going through these surgeries, God was present, right?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So, I must say that this is inspiring. you know, going through so much, but yet you were determined.
Mhm.
What motivated you to keep pushing despite the odds?
Well, because I knew the source of my strength. I knew I could conquer my milestones by when I was, when I was younger. I'm still young. When I was younger, I
Yes.
never knew I was different until other kids told me. I was bullied. I was bullied when I was younger. When I was little. I was bullied because I walked differently from everybody else, and I was different, and they saw that. And, kids can be mean. I with wanting spina bifida, you have incontinence issues,
Yeah.
and they also knew that. And I was bullied, especially when I was in
Elementary school?
elementary school. I was in elementary school, and kids, they were friendly towards me one day, and the next day they were mean. They would not want to play with me. They just didn't want to hang around me because I was different. And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. And plus, I was the only student with brown skin.
Yeah. And I like to probe on this. How did you see yourself as being different from the other kids? Did you think less of yourself?
I didn't think less of myself. I knew I walked differently than everybody else, but I just dealt with it. I had to deal with it. It's something I could do to change it. So I dealt with it, and
Perhaps
I accepted it.
Right. You have physical ailments, but as a person, you were strong.
Yes.
Mentally, you're a strong person, and you had a way to deal with even the bullies at school from that early.
And
So
that was only God.
I'm picking up two things already. You going through the surgeries.
Yeah.
You believed that you were going to make it, and God was going to take you through. And then you're given examples at school where kids saw you to look different or walk differently, and yet you were determined not to let people cause you to think less of yourself.
And I found things to do to busy myself in school, even though the kids didn't want to hang around me. I would play by myself. I would sing. I would make up songs and I would sing.
Yeah.
And my mother was the cook at that school as well, and I would hang out with her in the kitchen. That's probably one of the reasons why I developed the love of cooking.
Yeah. Okay. That's nice.
Yeah.
How about your teachers? You mentioned your students. How caring were your teachers?
I had one favorite teacher. She's the one that treated me with respect.
Yeah.
The other teachers, they were like the students. They didn't.
Which is a shame. I know the system has changed much now,
Yeah.
because back then there weren't students with whatever disability or whatever unusual situation weren't as protected as they are today.
I do want to mention that there was this one kid that would play with me in the sandbox, but he was not a student there. And I've wondered about that. I wondered, was that my guardian angel? Because I never knew his name. And none of the teachers saw him. None of the kids saw him, but they saw him playing with me in the sandbox and treating me with respect.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering, later on in life, was that my guardian angel protecting me and helping me to cope with the situation?
Could be. Why not? Yeah.
Could be.
Why not? You needed company.
I did.
But all you can recall is that the person was there with you when you needed that company in the sandbox. That's just something else. That's special.
It is.
I have had guardian angels. I'm happy to say I have had encounters where I've broken down, my motor car broken down on the road, and very deserted place, and someone drove up and helped me. And it is not for me to tell my story today. I'm just affirming that I believe in guardian angels.
Oh, yes, yes. They are real. They are real.
Thank you for sharing all these details and for recalling.
Oh, you're
And
welcome.
we're here today. We want to talk at something that happened more recent. But before we get into your cancer story, I should probe on your experience with your dad's passing. From one thing to the other, losing your father to gastric stomach cancer must have been incredibly difficult. How did you navigate that grief during that?
I'm still grieving.
Yeah.
I'm still grieving. It's only been, I'm sorry, it's
No.
only been a little over 3 years. July 17th
Yeah.
of this year marked 3 years since we lost him. And it's been incredibly difficult. Well, I can go into the story of the...
Please.
Yes.
Give us at least some of it,
Okay.
and it's okay if you cry. It's all right, Tricia. It's been difficult, right?
It has. I mean, my father, he's my best friend.
Yeah.
And I'm a daddy's girl. I'm a daddy's girl, and anybody who's watching this, they'll understand. Well, in 2020, this was during COVID, of course. My father, well, we know it's before, in 2020, the first part of 2020 in January, my father he was throwing up. And we couldn't figure out what was going on. And at first we thought it was a GERD. That's what was told. But it turned out it wasn't. I had a feeling, I felt like the Lord was telling me, now I feel like the Lord was telling me to go on the computer and look up the symptoms that my father was having. And my mother had the same feeling. And it came to gastric stomach cancer. But we pushed it out of our minds. This was in 2020. We pushed it out of our minds and not wanting to believe that it was happening. But
so you were home, and you did some research.
I did some research.
It's showing gastric stomach cancer.
Stomach cancer, yes.
So that prompts you to, you really need help, right?
You really need help. And he wasn't, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. Take your time.
We kept telling him to go to the hospital to get it checked out, but he felt like that there was no need. He would just get over the symptoms. He'll be fine. Excuse me. He would be fine.
So you went to the doctor where he was asked to see an oncologist or something, trying to help you to.
Well, we were moving. We had to move out of our house back in 2020. And it was already a stressful situation. That's another story in itself. And we had to move out of our house, and we didn't have a place to go. So we had to move into my mother's mother, my grandmother's home. And during that time, before we actually had to move out of the house, my father said, I think I need to go to the hospital. And so my mother went ahead and took him to the hospital, and I stayed home. While my mother drove him to the hospital. And this was during COVID. They let my father into the emergency room, but my mother had to stay out. She was not allowed to be with him. And so my mother had to come back home and give me updates on what was happening. And of course, my father was updating me what was happening. He had to stay in the waiting room for a while until he was called. They saw that he was low on blood, and so they had to give him a blood transfusion while he was there. And they decided to admit him. And we still didn't know what was going on. He was still not feeling good. He was feeling weak and really tired, exhausted. They did a lot of testing, and they decided for him to have surgery to remove his stomach, parts of his stomach, not the whole thing, just parts of it, because he was feeling bloated and just wasn't feeling the best. And when they went in the surgery, they found cancer. And what happened was, as a teenager, my father had an ulcer, and they did emergency surgery on him, and
That's when he was a teenager.
That's when he was a teenager. My parents were courting at that time. And when they did the surgery, they did not close up the wound, the surgical part, surgical site correctly, and toxins and food went into his stomach, and it built up over the years, over 40 years. And it was a botched procedure. It was a botched procedure, and we didn't know anything about it over the years. We had no idea. But looking back, we noticed, we played back in our minds what was happening, because he was coughing a lot and clearing his throat, and he was hoarse sometimes, and he had insomnia, stomach pain, just over the years, it was just different things happening. And different doctors couldn't figure things out, what was wrong with it, and they wouldn't have known unless they had surgery.
So they opened him up for surgery, and they found evidence of cancer.
They did, and this was July of 2020, and this was my mother and I were still trying to move things out of the house.
You're changing house, and this is in COVID time.
During COVID,
really difficult.
Very difficult. We had to put stuff in storage. Had to put some things to my grandmother's house, and it was just really stressful and just a very trying time for all three of us. It was very difficult, and my father didn't believe that he had cancer, but as soon as the doctor came in the room after he recovered from surgery, he said, "Mr. Williams, you have cancer." And he knew before he even said those words, he knew what he was going to do. And I'm thinking in my mind, okay, he just has maybe just stage 1, maybe 2 or 3. Didn't know until he was discharged that he had stage 4.
Advanced
stage of cancer. And so he had I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead. You tell me the story.
He had surgery July 17th, 2020, and we lost him July 17th, 2021.
2021. I'm sorry to hear that too.
Thank you. Thank you.
Did he undergo any treatment for it?
No. Well, the doctor said that the chemo wouldn't help him, but what he wanted to do, and what he did do, was do natural remedies, which actually helped lengthen his life. Because at first he was told he would live no more than 2 weeks, and he lived a whole year since the day that he had his surgery in 2020. And the Lord was merciful on him, and people didn't actually see that he was sick. They didn't see that he was sick. He obviously lost some weight, because gastric stomach cancer does make you lose a significant amount of weight. But after his surgery, he actually felt a little bit better. He could eat again and not vomit.
Sure.
He had a little bald spot in the back of his head, and that surgery actually helped grow the hair back. And
So you believed during that time that Dad was going to recover?
I actually did think he was going to recover, and I prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed that he would recover, and he prayed as well. But he and the thing was, when my father he had to go back and forth to the hospital during that time, the later months leading up to him going to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
He sat down in a chair. He was really weak and really tired, and I told him, I wish it was me instead of you. Yeah. He shook his head. He said, I thank the Lord every day that it's me and not you and your mother. He reminds me of a modern day Job. Job in the Bible, he went through sickness, and he was to the point to almost death. And that's how my father was. He was like Job. He had firm faith in God, even though Satan was putting all these things on him, attacking him.
Yeah.
He never ever turned his back on God. And even hours before he went to sleep, he was ministering on the phone to his family. And he told them, I want to see you at the tree of life. I want to see you there. And the last thing that my father told, his last words to me was, I love you. And the mother and I were with him when he took his last breath. It was just the three of us, like it always has been. It was just the three of us at the hospital. I took his pulse. I kept checking his pulse, and it kept getting weaker and weaker. And I was the one that called it. He went to sleep on the 7th month, July 18th, at 7:30 in the morning on the 7th day, Sabbath, Saturday. And God's favorite number is 7.
Yeah.
So
I see. And clearly that was a spiritual person. And spirituality was key in your household, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And I'm of the impression that helped you throughout that Job experience.
Yeah. We would have worship together, and he taught me the Bible. He taught me to memorize scripture. We did everything together. We would have daddy-daughter days. And my mother's been with him since she was 14 years old. He taught her how to drive. They were baptized together into the church. So when people, you hear people say, that's my ride or die, that's her ride or die.
Yeah.
When they really stay true to their vows, their marriage vows, for better, for worse, for richer, for in sickness and in health, because they took care of each other. And they never looked at another person. They always looked to each other. They never sought to be with anybody else but each other. And God was in the center of their marriage.
That's commendable.
Yeah.
Now, Tricia, if you can find the strength to carry on with this interview,
yes,
I know talking about it is somewhat therapeutic, and I'm thankful.
It is.
Life took another turn after your dad passed away.
Yeah.
You discovered you had breast cancer. Can you tell us, between the time your dad passed and your diagnosis, how did you come to learn and take us there as much as you can?
Thanks for listening to Cultivating Health Equity Stories. Remember, our mission is to amplify voices, challenge norms, and inspire change. Go to cultivatehealthequity.com, sign up on our email list, subscribe for future episodes, and find the resources mentioned in the show notes. Until next time.